Following the Fathers, Identifying Moresheth-gath, the Hometown of Micah the Prophet, by Chris McKinny. The location of Moresheth-gath, the hometown of Micah the Prophet, has not yet been well established, despite various suggested site identifications. In my opinion, the early Christian traditions, particularly Eusebius and the Onomasticon, do not fit with Tell Judeidah or Tel Goded, the most common suggested site for Moresheth-gath. This identification is actually based on part of the early Christian traditional evidence, but it fails to match all of the locational evidence that Eusebius and other early church fathers provide. I will argue that biblical and Byzantine Moresheth-gath should be located east of Eleutheropolis, in accordance with Eusebius and other early Christian traditions, and should be localized at Khirbet Beit ʿAlam. Moresheth-gath only appears once in the biblical text, where it occurs between Lachish and Achziv in Micah's sarcastic, pun-filled geographical lament in Micah 1:10-16. The appearance of Moresheth-gath in Micah's lament clearly indicates that the town was located in the Shephelah, near the positively identified towns of Gath, Lachish, Mareshah, and Adullam. Moresheth-gath also appears in the Gentilic at the beginning of Micah in connection with the prophet. Despite Moresheth-gath's similarities with Mareshah, the names derive from different roots in the Hebrew Bible, as Mareshah occurs 8 times in the biblical text, always without the Olam Vav. By contrast, Moreshet appears with the Olam Vav, and the Gentilic occurrence in Jeremiah 26:18 likewise has the Olam Vav in the Morashti. The distinction between the towns of Mareshah and Moresheth-gath is made clear by Micah 1:14-15. As both toponyms appear in the same lament with slightly different spellings. Moresheth-gath could be understood as the possession of Gath, that is, a winepress, but it may more likely refer to the similar-sounding betrothed, as shulchim clearly refers to a dowry. In either case, this is meant to be sarcastically related to the dowries that were metaphorically given to the daughter of Zion, who is personified in this section by Lachish, Moresheth-gath, Achziv, Mareshah, and Adullam, towns of Judah. Presumably, the metaphor can be interpreted as Yahweh as the father of the metaphorical betrothed brides, giving his daughter a dowry while sending them away in marriage. The dowry itself seems to be a sarcastic reference to the conquest of the Shephelah by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. This is also indicated by the reference to the transgressions of Israel, the kings of Israel, and the glory of Israel. These seem to be allusions to the recent destruction of Samaria / the kingdom of Israel by Shalmaneser V and Sargon II. In other words, Judah would be, or perhaps already had been, conquered by the same conqueror who had defeated Israel. That would be Assyria. Yet Micah is indicating that it is actually Yahweh, the father of the bride, who was the ultimate arranger of the looming marriage/destruction. The meaning of Moresheth-gath might indicate a close proximity to the town of Gath, although which Gath this would be is uncertain, as there are 2 or 3 toponyms with the Gath component in the Shephelah, including Gath of the Philistines, Gath Rimmon/Gittaim, and also probably another Gath in the Ayalon Valley. It is also possible that Moresheth should be understood as a related settlement to Mareshah. While their names apparently have different meanings, it is conceivable that the near identical names indicate proximity. Undoubtedly, Moresheth-gath should be located in the central Shephelah, as it appears alongside Lachish, Achziv, Mareshah, and Adullam in Micah 1:13-15. All of these towns have been identified in a relatively small area between the Elah and Lachish valleys. For this reason, Levine's suggestion to identify Moresheth-gath with Tel Charasim seems less likely. The apparent lack of remains from the Iron To-Be, that would be the time period of Micah, at Tel Harasim also mitigates against this suggestion. Levine's suggestion can in no way match the later Christian tradition regarding the location of Moresheth-gath. In general, Byzantine traditions may prove to be spurious, but in this case, I believe that there is good reason to follow the early church fathers in locating Moresheth-gath in close proximity to and east of Eleutheropolis. Besides the biblical references, the similar toponym of Morashti also appears in the Amarna letters. In EA 335, Abdi Ashtarti was apparently the successor to Shuardarta, the presumed ruler of Gath, which is located at Tel Asafi. Abdi Ashtarti complained that the city of Morashti had recently been captured, presumably by Lachish. These details seem to indicate that Morashti was a smaller town that was fought over by the Canaanite city-states of Gath and Lachish, which point to it being located somewhere in the central Shephelah. If Morashti is the same ruin as Moresheth-gath, then Moresheth-gath should also have a significant Late Bronze 2A, that would be the 14th century, layer. On the other hand, it is possible that Morashti of Amarna can be related to Marashah, which would be located positively at Tel Sandhana, which also revealed Late Bronze remains, although only in Dagon's survey of the site. If so, then the biblical Moresheth-gath should be understood as a distinct settlement from Morashti of Amarna and need not have a Late Bronze layer. The above discovered biblical and possible extra-biblical text supplies scant details for locating Moresheth-gath within the Shephelah. However, early Christian tradition adds several more potential lines of evidence for locating biblical and Byzantine Moresheth-gath. Eusebius was the earliest Christian witness to the location of Moresheth-gath, as he wrote the following: Morathai, where Micah the prophet came, to the east of Eleutheropolis. These details from the Onomasticon were reproduced on the 6th century Madaba map, marking the location of Moresheth-gath just to the south of Kfar Zachariah and Safita, both locations in the Elah Valley, and also near Eleutheropolis. It is worth noting that the position of Moresheth-gath and the accompanying inscription related to Micah's tomb actually appear to the north or northeast of Eleutheropolis on the Madaba map. This is surprising given the reliance of the Madaba map on the Onomasticon. The geography on the Madaba map can be schematic or even erroneous, but the schematic geography of the mosaicist usually fits real-world topography, unless there are other factors involved. It should also be noted that a structural pillar within the 6th century AD church was located in the area that would have likely represented the area east of Eleutheropolis. Therefore, it seems possible that the space constraints due to the nearby pillar meant that Eleutheropolis and Moresheth-gath, as well as the location of Micah's tomb, caused the mosaicist to fit in Moresheth-gath as well as Micah's tomb in a slightly northern position than it actually was located. Considering the northeastern position of Moresheth-gath on the Madaba map, many scholars have settled on Khirbet al-Basal, located north of Kibbutz Beit Guvrin, for the location of the Byzantine settlement, church, and traditional tomb of Micah, while Tel Goded or Tell Judeidah represents biblical Moresheth-gath based on this supposed traditional connection. These conclusions are possible, but not certain, as Khirbet al-Basal, which does have remains from the Byzantine period and a church, is located due north of Eleutheropolis and not east as Eusebius and Jerome indicated. While Eusebius and Jerome are sometimes mistaken in their mileage and direction, many other citations from the Onomasticon can be cited in support of Eusebius's detailed and accurate description of the contemporary settlements surrounding Byzantine Eleutheropolis. Eusebius accurately demarcated many Shephelah sites from Eleutheropolis in each cardinal direction. Thus, it would seem more likely that Byzantine Moresheth-gath should be located east of Eleutheropolis and not north, which would seem to factor against Khirbet el-Basal, which could actually be, in my opinion, the second Beit Sor mentioned by Eusebius. I have provided a list of all the site identifications in the Onomasticon that are related to mileage given from Eleutheropolis. It should be clear that Eusebius provides vital clues for an astounding amount of positive site identifications in the region, and that his locational data should be taken very seriously. Next, in his commentary on Micah, Jerome discussed the location of Moresheth-gath as follows. The word came to Micah of Moresheth, which up till today is scarcely a large village of Palestine near Eleutheropolis. Jerome also lists the towns of Marashah and Morashti separately and the epitaph of Paula. In this passage, Jerome located Samson's spring between Soho and Eleutheropolis. In citing this text and several other traditions related to Samson and a spring in the vicinity, Victor Guerin persuasively argued that these traditions were preserved at a site north-northeast of Tel Goded, which he referred to as Kenat Ein Lahi Es Safir. This site was probably known as Khirbet el Ain in later maps and itineraries. In any case, this passage clearly places the Byzantine tradition of Samson Springs south of Soho and north of Morashti, as well as Marashah. Around the same time frame as Jerome, Sozomen, the 5th century church historian, mentioned the locations of the tombs of Habakkuk and Micah. These tombs were found in AD 393 by Zebinus, the bishop of Eleutheropolis, during the reign of Theodosius. Regarding these tombs, Sozomen wrote the following: "The relics of Habakkuk were found at Keilah, a city formerly called Keilah. The tomb of Micah was discovered at a distance of 10 stadia from Keilah, at a place called Bir Etzati or Bira. Similarly, Peter the deacon of Cassini listed the locations of Habakkuk and Micah's tombs in the region of Eleutheropolis. In Eleutheropolis, the place Bekoika is the location of the tomb of the prophet Habakkuk. From Eleutheropolis, at the 3rd milestone, in the place that is called Kiriasati, as already stated, which is called Morashtites or Morashti, is the tomb of the prophet Saint Micah." The geographic details from Peter the Deacon provide additional data that supports what we have argued above. This text seems to corroborate the tomb of Habakkuk in the vicinity of Eleutheropolis and also provides further locational data for Moresheth-gath. Regarding the traditional identification of the tomb of Habakkuk, surveys at Khirbet Beit revealed remains from the Hellenistic and Byzantine primarily, but also, and quite interestingly, revealed remains from the Iron Sea, the period that is thought to be contemporary with the era of the Judahite prophet. In light of this, it is not impossible that Eusebius and Sozomen provide a historical tradition related to the tomb of Habakkuk and perhaps some relationship to the site of Keilah. Peter the Deacon's tradition indicated that Morashti was at the 3rd milestone from Eleutheropolis. Unfortunately, the direction was not provided. It seems unlikely that the direction would be to the south or southwest, as this would be either Marashah or on the way to Gaza. It also seems less likely that the direction would be to the north, which would be beyond Tel Goded and in the vicinity of Drusius or Horvat Midras. A western direction for Peter the Deacon's tradition is also unlikely, but Tel Zite is located almost exactly 3 Roman miles west of Eleutheropolis. In light of this, Naaman's suggestion to identify biblical Moresheth-gath and Amarna Morashti at Tel Zite should be examined. Tappy's excavations at Tel Zite expose substantial late bronze layers, including a large public building and a massive destruction layer that can be associated with the Amarna age. During the Iron II, the site was inhabited from throughout the Iron IIA until its ultimate destruction in 701 BC, likely at the hands of Sennacherib. From this latter stratum, several lamellic seal impressions and a personal seal were uncovered. This site was apparently unoccupied during the Byzantine period. The archaeological remains at Tel Zite are suitable for Morashti of Amarna and biblical Moresheth-gath. Nevertheless, one must consider the information from Eusebius, which indicates that Moresheth-gath should be located east and not west of Eleutheropolis, as well as the Medaba map, which certainly does not indicate a western location for Moresheth-gath. Yet, if one rejects the later traditional evidence for Moresheth-gath, then Tel Zite remains a possible candidate for Moresheth-gath. It should be noted here that Eusebius and the Medaba map provide locations for both the town of Morashti and the location of Micah's tomb. While traditions associated with the burial locations of biblical characters and saints often prove to be spurious, almost every single town that Eusebius located in relation to Eleutheropolis can be very plausibly identified with a suitable archaeological ruin. In my estimation, the traditional evidence from Eusebius, which is corroborated by Jerome, Sozomen, and Peter the Deacon, indicates that Moresheth-gath, both Byzantine and biblical, should be located to the east of Eleutheropolis. Here it is important to remember that Sozomen's 10 stadia distance to the tomb of Micah was recorded from Keilah, not Khirbet Beit. The short distance, as well as the name Bera, are significant, as they could point to the site of Muarash Bara. This site, in accord with Peter the Deacon, is also 3 Roman miles east of Eleutheropolis, directly north of the ancient road that runs along Nahal Marashah. Muarash Bara well matches the details outlined above regarding the location of Byzantine Morashti with its church and the traditional tomb of Micah. Muarash Bara is located around 2 miles to the west of Keilah. It also fits Eusebius's and Jerome's description of the village as being located east of Eleutheropolis, as well as the secondary Christian traditions discussed above. Regarding toponymic retention, Muarash could conceivably preserve Moreshet. The presence of an ayin presents some difficulties, but the same can be said for Khirbet Marash, which preserves Marashah. Moreover, Bara would seem to also allow for a toponymic connection with the name Bira or Birat Shati, provided by Sozomen. Alternately, the site of Khirbet Korasha, which is to the south of Nahal Marashah, could theoretically preserve Kiryasati, the alternate name for the site given by Peter the Deacon. Yehuda Dagan's survey of Muarash Bara showed signs of intense illicit excavations and revealed only a single iron 2B sherd, as well as sherds from the Persian, Byzantine, and Mamluk periods over an area of 25 dunams. For our purpose, the Byzantine remains are the most significant for suggesting a connection between Muarash Bara with Marashti of early Christian tradition. Yet, the relatively small size does not seem to match Jerome's statement that Moresheth-gath was a large village. Khirbet el-Korashah is a large Byzantine settlement of 60 dunams, but only has scanty remains from the Iron 2B. Biblical Moresheth-gath certainly necessitates a substantial Iron 2B occupation due to its appearance in the book of Micah. The absence of Moresheth-gath from the various Shphelah districts of the Judahite administrative division, which are usually dated to either the 9th or the 7th century BCE, could also hint at the possibility that Moresheth-gath was either not populated or was relatively insignificant during the preceding or subsequent eras of Judah's history. The biblical data related to Moresheth-gath allows for an exclusive 8th century date for the town. Yet it is also possible that the town was occupied throughout the Iron II and was simply not included in the extant town register list now in Joshua 15:33-44. Following this line of reasoning, there is one large Iron II and Byzantine ruin within the immediate vicinity of Muarash Bara and Khirbet el-Korashah, Khirbet Beit ʿAlam. Khirbet Beit ʿAlam is located between these two ruins on the southern bank of Nahal Marashah, about 3.5 miles to the east of Eleutheropolis. According to Dagan's survey, the northern part of the site seems to have been settled from the early Bronze through the Middle Bronze, as well as throughout the Iron II, over an area of around 60 dunams. The southern part of the site was apparently intensely occupied in later periods, which includes occupation from the Hellenistic, Roman, and Byzantine period, as well as later periods. A recent salvage excavation on the eastern edge of Khirbet Beit ʿAlam confirmed occupation during these periods, as well as several caves and a wine press well dated to the late Roman and Byzantine period. While this suggestion cannot be considered definitive, Khirbet Beit ʿAlam matches much of the evidence from Moresheth-gath in both the biblical and Byzantine sources. According to its appearance in Micah's lament, Moresheth-gath should be occupied during the 8th century BC and located in the central Shphelah near Lachish, Aksiv, Marashah, and Adullam. Khirbet Beit ʿAlam fits these requirements. In addition, the nearby site of Muarash Bara may retain the name Moreshet. As we have seen, the suggestions to connect Moresheth-gath with either Tel Harasim or Tel Zite completely discount the evidence from the Onomasticon and other related early Christian tradition. In my view, the historical geographical details from Eusebius in the vicinity of Eleutheropolis should not be so easily disregarded unless there are good reasons to do so. If the above suggestions of Khirbet Beit ʿAlam can be substantiated, then we might finally have determined where the betrothed daughter of Zion, that would be Moresheth-gath and the related towns, actually received her dowry.